So what's the deal? Why are these guys on my lot? You want to be a tough neighbor, and I'm going to be tough back. I want them off my lot, and you're not putting anything there. Tough.
The fencing is being replaced at your husband.
You know what? You know what? You created nothing but crap with all your picture taken. We're cutting down trees, which actually ultimately helped you. All right? We took back your property for you because it was creating so many leaves and everything. What are you taking pictures? I'll call the cops. My husband told me to call the cops. You want me to do that?
Yes, and I will show him where the property line is.
You don't have no idea where the property line is.
Well, you don't know what you're speaking about.
You don't either, because you weren't here when it was put in. You weren't here when it was put in, okay? Or you weren't old enough to know. Don't even go there.
There are very few things that are more entertaining than watching neighbors argue over a property line. 99% of the time, they don't know what they're talking about. And the other 1%, they know just enough to not make any sense. And then when they start throwing the accusations at each other and then they resolve to just personal threats, it gets really entertaining. In this video, we're going to talk about how to kind of know what you're talking about when it comes to property lines, how to deal with it. This is great stuff, but you got to know how to deal with these situations when you get them. And as a real estate professional, as a real estate investor, and somebody that goes through this all the time with neighbors just like this, listen up and we'll make our way through this. Let's get to it.
My property. Get property.
I'm on right away. Do you own this house?
They don't even have a gun.
Not where it's at. This house, which is right down here. You don't stand around.
Good times.
YouTube it. You betcha. They're past the plants. Yeah, they are. Okay, I don't see any damage. Let's just let them get it.
I'm going to teach you how I navigate these situations as a real estate professional, as a real estate investor, a guy that buys a lot of properties and have bought a lot without surveys. And I'm going to talk about what I do and how I kind of navigate these things, and that way you can form your own opinion. And I always say consult an attorney always if you have to. And in this video, we're going to break it down Barney style without giving you a surveying degree. And me as just a fly-by-night real estate investor that's bought a lot of properties and have helped people buy a lot of properties. So let's get right to it, and I'm going to break this thing down the best I can.
You're doing, yeah? You are artificial and disgusting. And you know what? Your kid is going to die. And I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to watch and smile as it happens. And watch. Yes.
It's currently 5 p.m. on a Saturday in April.
Yeah.
And this woman lives next to me in Riverview, Florida. And she's going on a rant. She just punched a hole.
So we've all seen videos like this.
Here is why we are done flipping in the hood. They took the concrete out of the ground to get this out.
Where people are at each other's throats over 6 inches, 2 inches, 1 inch. Well, I have a theory on this, and it's backed by a lot of really good legal opinion because I've been in the room with a lot of really good lawyers, and they're not going to tell you this stuff for free, but Jack will, because it's my opinion, and I'm not telling you to do any of this stuff. This is my opinion. Now, this differs by state, and the first thing we're going to talk about is the fence line, okay? Here in the state of Florida, probably different in your state. Each state's got its own little nifty thing. But the way I always look at it is no fence line delineates a property line. It is just a fence. And sometimes when people put their fence down, they put it on the wrong side, okay? They put it on one side or the other, and then they try to save their receipts. And hopefully you had gotten a survey when you put that fence down and you didn't put it on your neighbor's property. So a lot of times when you do that, they just inherit the fence and it becomes their fence. And remember, just because somebody cut the grass for years or maintained a fence line or did something with a property to maintain it does not mean it is now yours. Make sure you understand what adverse possession is and any type of those hostile takeovers of property. Whatever your state says about it, whatever, if you're in Florida, Missouri, wherever, make sure you understand it. And I'll try to link like Florida's analogy down below. But you got to do a lot. You got to hop a lot of hurdles to actually take a property with adverse possession. I'm not going to say what those are. go talk to an attorney, because somebody will try to hit me up if I try to give any type of analogies of that. So it can be done, but you have to follow quite a few steps to do it. Usually you have to notify, usually you have to make it known that you're trying to take the property over. And then go from there and do the right paperwork.
So I put this tarp here so my neighbor couldn't see me. Look what this did. She burned in her own peepholes so she could still watch us.
Every state's going to be different. But it does not matter which way the panes face or which way the north, south, east, west shadow grazes it, or whatever you want to explain it. Here in the state of Florida, it is whose property is that fence on. So it is really important that you delineate where your property line is before you start a fight. So for me, I will not argue with anybody over their property line without a survey from a surveyor, stamped by a surveyor with a seal. Jack Motley will not argue with you about it if you do not have a survey, especially if I have a survey, because he who has the survey in most states wins. Now, I would like to say there are a lot of apps out there right now that'll really help you streamline some of the stuff, like Landglide, and I think Onyx is another one. Now, they're not perfect either. Now, if you get in an argument with the game warden over this, he's probably going to win. But it is one of those things that can help you prove your point. So when you are looking at a property, usually, and we're just going to talk about lot and block properties here. If a neighborhood is fairly old and it was a lot and block neighborhood, most of the surveys are going to be pretty close, okay? They are going to be within 6 inches or a foot, okay? I've bought quite a few houses without surveys in lot and block neighborhoods because here's what I will do. I see the property. I drive past the property or I go to the property. I see where the fences are. I see how all the other fences are in the neighborhood. See how old the fence is. And I see if the property has changed hands recently. And maybe one of it was with a mortgage. Because when you buy with a bank, they make you get a survey most of the times in most states. So you know the survey probably was done. And sometimes you can assume that survey from the other seller, but you know that there was probably not an encumbrance on that survey, or the bank would not probably allow the title to change hands, and there was probably title insurance. So I like to check these boxes off in my analysis. So 1, I'm like, okay, has it changed hands recently? 2, does the fence look like it's been there a while? 3, is this a square property type? So squares are easy. When they start to bend or curve, that's when it starts to get tricky. Those, you're going to have to really navigate those closely. But a square one, that's what we're talking about here. Okay, so this is a perfect example of what I was telling you about. See this telephone pole right here? See the one down there? That is the outer boundary of this alley, which this is a county easement. It's actually it's owned by the road department, well, the county. Road department maintains it, and they go all through this neighborhood. So the back part of a lot of these properties come up to the alley. And if you look at on the property appraiser's website or any of the surveys, they're exactly 15 feet wide. But if you look at where this fence comes together, see the indenture? So like this is actually the back of my fence. It's off by, solid foot, okay? And as you go down there, you can see it juts out again on this side. So you can't just look at a fence and say the property line's correct. First, hopefully you're using your app. Second, you're going to go to the property appraiser. You can see the dimensions of that property. Third, we all know if it's changed hands recently and if there was a survey because of a mortgage. Next, we're going to go out there. We're going to look for the metal pins. There are pins. See the telephone pole? Stop sign. Street signs. So you got a storm drain right here. You got a utility line. Same way right here. We got street signs and we got the telephone pole directly down the side of the street there. And you can see where their fence pretty much stops. So I actually bought this property right here without a survey. And I just guessed. And here's how I did it. See the little sticks in the ground? That's where the stakes are. And if you come over here, see another one down at the other end. And I took a magnet, or I took a magnet and a metal detector, and I went and found the stake over there. There's the other stake right there, and there's another stake directly in the front yard. I went from that stake to that stake on the property appraiser, the number of feet to the next stake, and then I went from that stake to the next stake. And if you're off a little bit, you take from that stake and go to the next property's stake marker. You can actually see over here on the meter some of the survey markers. That's what they did. And you start over again. So you can see right here where they had the markers on the fence. There's another set of stakes in here for this property. So you'd go from that stake marker to that stake marker, what's on the property appraiser site, the dimensions of the property, and then you go from that one to the next one, and it should all line up. And if you graph it out on your sheet of paper, you should have the actual map of the property. Sometimes they're hard to find. Sometimes they get moved. That's why sometimes you got to go to the next property. I've even seen surveyors go 3 or 4 properties over and start back to make sure everything's correct, because they're kind of liable for a wrong survey, because what if somebody builds something where they're not supposed to? But I've done this a few times, and I'm usually pretty close. Mainly I just don't want to make sure that there's my property line's not running through somebody's house or something. These deal with like code enforcement. These don't really deal with the regular law enforcement. So situations like this, you need to just call your code enforcement. They're usually like a branch of the sheriff's department. And in most cases, they have more power than the sheriff's department as far as code violations, pest control, rats, rodents, trash, smells, encroachments like somebody built a shed that gets onto your property, or is not on the setback, or there's something wrong. You call code enforcement. When there's lots of debris like this, you call code enforcement. They'll usually come write the owner a ticket. They'll force them to put it up. They'll force them to clean it up, and they'll charge them per day until they do it. And then you have situations like this one.
Almost 2 years. Last year it did fall completely over, and they lent themselves in our backyard, didn't introduce themselves, didn't even say anything. I just found some strange man in my backyard. But now they've decided that they're going to allow their pool to drain onto our property. So it is completely killing my bush. It is eating away at my garden bed. Look at the color between this one and this one. Green, yellow. No telling how.
Odds are this is another code enforcement violation. Water's coming under her fence, it's going to her yard, it's causing problems. They're diverting water into places it's not supposed to be. Fence is falling over, it's starting to encroach. It's a danger, it's a hazard. Anytime you find things like that, trees that are dead, it's going to fall on somebody. Odds are code enforcement's going to come and be like, hey, that's dangerous, cut it down, fix yourself. Situations like your neighbor having trees over your house and they need to be cut down. Another situation where you're going to have to fight that fight if they don't want to talk to you about it, of cutting it down. They're going to call the cops on you. Deputy shows up. You got to explain it. Once you explain it, know your rights. And I talked about that in the video. I'll try to link it right here or down below of what happens when, you got to do that. And you got to say, hey, I have my survey. These trees are on my property. They're causing a danger. We're going to cut them down. You have somebody official do it, like a tree cutting crew with an arborist. And then that way, when the other side starts complaining, it's, hey, an arborist did it. He's licensed, insured. Here's our survey. What say you? And then you just shut up because you know the rules. You know the rules. The other person's just screaming. And you're going to win when you know the rules. You know the law. And if the deputy doesn't know the law, you have to say, hey, deputy, I believe this is a civil matter. It's not legal advice. So this is a civil matter. Here's my survey. We're on our property. Legal arborist has been hired, contracted. They're going to have to take us to court. This is a civil matter. And that's usually the way it goes. Be sure you record everything within your rights. You record as much as you can. They're most likely going to lie on the police report, on their complaint. They're going to lie to the deputy. The deputy's probably going to know everybody's lying. So make sure you've got a record of it, that you stayed on your side of the property, that you did everything you're supposed to do within the legal confines of the law. Because if there is a civil case about it, you did have to go to civil court. You've got a record, a document. You've documented everything for the court. And it just helps tremendously, just tremendously. And just remember that people are going to lie. And odds are their view of it is going to be totally different than yours. So you just got to remember that. I hate to have to say that, but these videos just show how much each side is going to different. It's going to be how each side's story is going to be different. It's going to be comical. So just know, don't be that person that wants to be nice and afraid to record, because you're going to be the one wishing you had a record of it, because the police officer is probably not going to believe either side. It's going to be he said, she said. The judge is not going to believe anything that's not documented, because it's really hard to know what's going on in these cases. And remember, in real estate, if it is not written down, it does not matter. It is in most states, if it is not written down in real estate, it is not legal. It is not official. It is not anything. It's like it was never said. The court is just going to toss that junk, in my opinion. Okay? And like I said, every state's going to be different. He said, they said, has lost people a lot of money. So make sure you have a survey. You have official written stuff like emails. You have official documents that have been signed. You have witnesses. You have notarization. You have an ability to go to an attorney and present an actual case. There's no, well, they did this, so we're doing that, or they're a bad person, so I should be able to do this, or they, hit their kids, so I'm going to do. No. What is the facts of the law? What is the facts of the case? Go read it for yourself. It's all online. And make sure you do that and you stay within those confines. I'm just telling you my opinion of what I would do inside my head while I'm thinking about this. In my opinion, this is what I would do.
Thing that they did, put cameras, about 4 or 5 of them. There's a camera right here. This stick right here, it's a huge camera. There's another one right here. You also get free light. That's a light that they turn on. It's a little bit wet right here. Well, apparently they also let their water run. We actually had to do this little pathway for the water to go. I don't know if you can see the water. And it goes all the way down there. I have these lovely neighbors that devote their time choosing songs. My kids constantly have to be hearing this and this is every single day. So the plan's to cover.
And let me make it known, I am not a surveyor. I am not an attorney. This is just me as an investor spitballing this, trying to give you an idea. I'm not trying to give you any advice here. I'm just giving you how I would go about doing this. Now, legal descriptions get harder and harder and harder. Some properties it's really almost impossible to do this with, but just the normal little neighborhood, sometimes you can figure them out. There's always anomalies, but this will get you in a ballpark. See, there's the other property marker, and the other one is over there. Metal stakes that they drive into the ground, and you can take a metal detector and you can walk out there and find these pins. Now, you might be wondering, well, what if they move the pins? What a surveyor is going to do is he's going to find that pin, and then he's going to go to the next adjacent property's pin, and then he's going to go to another one if he can't find that one and it doesn't seem right, and he's going to step it off. He's going to put a laser on it and tell you exactly how many feet are from the beginning to the end of the property, okay, from pin to pin. And if it matches what the property appraiser has or any of the plat books, he's probably going to be good. And he's going to do it front, back, side to side, and he's going to draw his angles. Now, this is where sometimes, like, you might get a straight line and a fence that does like this, right? Well, we're going on the straight line, and like, if you look in old neighborhoods, like my neighborhood, I'm going to show you that here in a second. See, I'm having to be generic kind of be vague on this because I know somebody's going to sharpshoot me in the comment section. I'm trying to give you an idea of how to understand this stuff, to kind of look at the lay of the land and kind of know what you're talking about. And then you can get a survey. I always say get a survey, but sometimes you just don't have a chance to, or they're really expensive. Some big properties, they can be $2,000 or $3,000. You see lots of fences that go over property lines and look weird. So that's why I always say don't look at these fences. You want to know exactly where the property line is and shoot a straight line. Okay, so when you're going to buy a property, you want to go and look at where the utilities run, okay? I, first of all, look for power poles. And I know that the utility power poles are usually somewhere outside of a person's property. They're usually on an easement or some type of county maintained right-of-way. And except for in a couple of circumstances, and I'm going to show you one of those here in a second. So you're looking for the utilities. You know the utilities are usually outside the property line, so you can almost use those as a point of reference. Sidewalks, city sidewalks, things like that. That's usually where the boundary line is of that property. So you start finding these pins, you find the utilities, you find the boundary lines, you draw your lines, your straight lines, or if it's a bend, you're going to have to work that out. And legal descriptions sometimes can be quite tricky. That's why, and as a real estate agent, they make you, talk about or pass the test about legal descriptions, but very few agents actually know about these, and sometimes they can get in a pickle. And sometimes if you're an investor, you'll get in a pickle by assuming some of these if you're wrong. See, this is why permits are a big deal in real estate. When you go to put up a fence, most municipalities now make you get a permit. They make you submit a survey. They make you show where you're going to put those fences are on those property lines. Case in point, the one house here I am showing you, the fence is actually, nobody had gotten the property surveyed in like 75 years. And he finally got a survey and realized his property was bigger than what he actually realized. So he put this fence here on the survey. He got a permit to do it. The county let him do it. He built the fence, and the county actually had their road right away in the wrong spot. And the city had put their power poles in the wrong spot because an oak tree had picked up the property line fence marker and moved it because it had grown like 5 feet in diameter over the last 80 years. And so everybody just assumed the alley was in a different place. Actually, it was on the other side. And another dude had actually built a shed up against that property line, which just made the whole alley shift. So what happened is the utility company just assumed that the alley was from here to where the fence was. They didn't look at the survey because it's bends. And really, see that fence right there? It's in that tree. It moved it all over. And the actual fence line is over there. So this shed was not built in the right spot. Neither was that one. So this is why you get surveys. Okay, see this right here? So this is the fence line. This tree grew up in the middle of the alley. The actual alley the county thought was over here. This fence line was actually pushed back about another 10 feet. As you can see, looking down the alley right here. You see the alley right here? You see the telephone pole? Now, the alley used to be right here, right? And this fence was over there. But the true property line is actually over there. And the alley's from there to there. And it actually bended, like I was telling you, that it's hard to do bends. And so he built his fence. Code enforcement said it was okay. And then the neighborhood complained. Code enforcement came out. They wound up saying it was fine. People complained again. County attorney changed his mind. Code enforcement changed their mind. Said, hey, you gotta fix this fence. And I'm saying, to where? Because the survey is correct. And they had 3 surveys. A county survey, the personal survey, and then another independent survey. So at what point, if they're all the same, are we talking about here? So this is really important, and this is why you have to know where your property line is, and it is 100% worth every penny to have a survey done when you do these properties. Sometimes when you're trying to close quick, it's just impossible. Like with cash, usually the way I do my properties is I'm getting a better deal because I am closing fast. Sometimes it takes 3 to 4 weeks to get a survey done, especially during the summer when it's raining. So sometimes you just like wing it. Now, let's say there is a shed on the edge of the property, and this is where the permits come in. They won't let you usually build a shed within 3 feet here of a property line. Well, this is all my opinion here, okay? So, the actual alley is where these trees are. The road department doesn't want to remove these trees, really, because they're big and they're old, and they just want it to go back to the way it was. But 3 surveys say, this is the alley, not over there. As you can see, it's hard to do this on camera. You see the power pole right there? And you see the survey marker over there? Utility company really is kind of at fault here, in my opinion. You can see the other one over there, but this bends. It's supposed to be 15 feet wide. Make sure you understand setbacks. Make sure you understand standoffs. Make sure you understand in each state and sometimes in big cities, your setbacks, your easements, your utility lines, all these things are going to change the way you analyze these things. So this is going to be different everywhere you go. And when you get a survey, you need to know where some of those utility lines are going and what's buildable and what's not. Not the 4 corners of your property is probably going to be buildable. You're going to need an attorney. You're going to need a title company. You're going to need a surveyor. You're going to need to know all these things that has to do with your title and your property. So this will work in some situations, give you a rough idea. But to do it correctly, you need to go through the right steps. Survey, title company, title search, abstracts, all these things that allow you to know everything about your property. Lien searches, things like that. It's the correct way to do it. So if you're in a big city, lots of old buildings, do your due diligence. Don't just off the cuff this stuff. Only in some of these square, older neighborhoods with lots of extra space can you usually get away with this stuff. And I'm speaking very vaguely because I have to. And everything is different. Every law. Louisiana is going to be different than New York. New York's going to be different than Washington. It's all by state. So know your laws. Research them before you go pay cash for a property and you're bummed because you can't build a house or you're bummed because you can't build a driveway. I've seen this stuff happen. That's why I don't do vacant land anymore. So just understand this stuff. It's wild. This is to keep this problem from happening like we're talking about with the shed over there on the alley. Now, let's say you get too close and you're over the property line. You have an encumbrance. You have a property line that goes through something like a shed, a house. It's a real problem. So you got to be right on with these things. Now, I don't really want to talk about the beach or rivers, riparian rights, things like that with high and low tide, because that gets real tricky. Florida is in a really big pickle right now because people built beach houses on the beach and they think they own all the sand, and the high and low tide can move 15, 20 feet. And good luck with that. A lot of times these municipalities don't do mean tide watermark. They don't actually get them surveyed, and the water line has changed over the years. So remember, when you find your property line, know your setbacks. Go to the county permitting office and the zoning office and all those people and get their opinion on what the setback is on the front, back, and sides of your house. Okay, it's going to be different depending on the county, or whether you're in the city, or what state you're in, or if you're in the north or the south or the east or the west of this country. California is going to be different than New York. It's going to be different than Florida or rural Alabama. Just know what they will allow you to build and know how far it's got to be away from the setback, and go and get your permit. That way they can't make you move it once they allowed you to build it, because these things can be expensive. Building a fence can be quite expensive. It was $12, $13 linear foot or whatever, and you run, big yard, 2 or 3 acres, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars for a fence. So I would highly suggest that you learn the basic definitions in real estate law, okay? And like I said, I'm not an attorney. I'm just the only one that'll go on camera and tell you how to do this, because it took me a long time to learn this stuff. And I had to pay a lot of lawyers for them to tell me these things, okay? And how does this really usually work out? Look, I would find it very interesting if somebody actually sued you over 6 inches, unless they just got money to burn. Because retaining a lawyer is expensive. And real estate law and suing in real estate law, or suing somebody in real estate law, is like hard, okay? Takes a lot of money. And if it's not a high dollar property, it's not worth fighting over. Give them the 6 inches, right? Whatever. Unless it's like, you know, a big deal. So, unless you're dealing with $1 million properties, like some of these fences, unless we're talking about a long way, we're talking quarter of a mile, we're talking about 1,000 acres. Now we're talking about some big amount of property, okay? Like my mom's fence line's a quarter of a mile long and you're off 6 inches on a quarter of a mile. It comes out to be quite a bit. So I hope this helped. We don't want to wind up like, you know, these people that are constantly at war, and sometimes the person you're at war with doesn't understand what they don't understand, and that's what makes it really problematic and hard to do real estate. And then when people start calling code enforcement officer comes out there and sometimes he doesn't know what the surveys are or doing, and they're all different, and how's he supposed to know? So you wind up having to go to court for all these things. And meanwhile, the neighbors are at each other's throat, and it's just not a good situation to be in. Know the law, know your rights, have a survey, and as they would say, good fences make good neighbors. And I hope this helps, and this is how I navigate this stuff, and I'll see you guys later.